Samantha zoomed in on the photo Mia sent from her sleepover, and her heart stopped. In the background, barely visible, was a man she recognized from news reports, a registered sex offender, a knife in his hand. Mia was just feet away. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Samantha's fingers hovered over the screen of her phone, the soft glow illuminating her tired face. She'd been up late last night, finishing work for the office, but now, in the quiet of the morning, the rhythm of daily life returned with its small comforts. The gentle hum of the refrigerator in the corner, the scent of fresh coffee brewing, these were the moments she clung to. She tapped a few more buttons, her tired eyes briefly flickering over the screen as she read Mia's message again, smiling at the familiar simplicity of it. It was always reassuring to hear from her daughter, especially when Mia was away. The sleepovers were a chance for Mia to unwind with her friends, a time Samantha knew Mia needed, but it was also a subtle reminder of how quickly the years had flown by. She wasn't the little girl she once was, but then again, Samantha wasn't the woman she had been when Mia was younger. Life had shifted, and yet, moments like these, small, ordinary, made everything feel in place. Samantha's thumb brushed over the photo again. It was a simple snapshot, almost candid in its charm. Mia, the sweet, quiet one, was grinning wide, her messy hair fluffed up from the pillow fight they had probably just finished. Sarah was beside her, a little more polished, but the shared joy between them was palpable. The picture was something small, something simple, but in that moment, it seemed like everything in the world was right. Samantha typed a quick reply, her fingers moving instinctively. "Looks like you're having a great time, sweetie." She leaned back, watching the tiny dots disappear as the message sent. The soft rhythm of her kitchen surrounded her, and for a moment, she allowed herself to enjoy the stillness. Her gaze drifted to the countertop, where the clutter from her earlier breakfast still lay. A coffee cup half full, a few dishes left from her hasty morning routine. She'd been so focused on getting Mia to her sleepover last night and managing everything else that morning that she hadn't really noticed the mess. The house was quiet now, peaceful. She loved the feeling of it. Her thoughts then wandered to the upcoming weekend. Mia had 2 soccer games, and while Samantha never missed one, this time felt different. She had always been there for every match, cheering from the sidelines, but there was an unfamiliar weight on her chest. Her daughter wasn't a child anymore. That transition had been gradual, but this was something new. The joy in Mia's eyes when she stepped onto the field was all too familiar, but something told Samantha that she wasn't just seeing it from a mother's lens anymore. Something inside her was shifting. Mia was growing up. Samantha's hand lingered on her phone, and she noticed how easy it had become to slip into these fleeting moments of reflection, of small realizations that stitched together her life. Her phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her thoughts. Mia's reply had come through. "Yep, we're having so much fun. Thanks for the snacks, Mom." Samantha chuckled softly, shaking her head, the corners of her eyes crinkling. Her daughter was always so considerate, even from across town. As she placed her phone back on the table, everything felt peaceful again. Normal, even. But in the back of her mind, there was the faintest sense that the calm would soon give way to something more. Something she couldn't yet place. The phone felt heavier in her hand with each passing second, its smooth surface now a constant reminder of her growing unease. Samantha's fingers hovered over the screen, her thumb trembling as she scrolled back to the photo. Her mind whirred, but there was nothing her eyes could grasp in that moment, except the gnawing feeling in her gut, the way her heart had faltered when she first noticed him in the background. She zoomed in again, her breath shallow as the pixels sharpened, revealing more details. The man's face was partially obscured by the dim lighting of the room, but even then, his presence was unmistakable. There was a malice in his eyes, something dangerous, something that shouldn't have been there. His posture was rigid, like a predator just out of the girl's line of sight, And that expression, hardened, calculating, it sent an icy chill down her spine. It was too much for her to ignore. She had seen that face before, on news reports, on those community watch bulletins that always made her uncomfortable. The man in the background, the one who had been arrested for unspeakable crimes, the one whose name had been whispered in hushed tones on the playground when parents gathered to talk about their children's safety. His presence in the photo didn't make sense. How had she missed it the first time? It seemed so obvious now. Her pulse quickened as the realization took hold of her. Mia was there. Sarah was there. Her daughter. Her heart clenched, tightening with dread. The room around her seemed to grow smaller, colder. Every surface, every object in the house became a blur, like a fog descending over her thoughts. She was struggling to think clearly, the edges of her mind fraying as she frantically scanned the image, searching for something, anything that would offer a shred of comfort. But the man's eyes, the sharpness of his presence, refused to disappear. Her breathing grew uneven as panic crept in. Was he aware of the camera? Was he standing there watching them, waiting for the perfect moment? The questions spiraled faster than she could answer, each one feeding her fear, urging her to act. Her hands shook as she reached for the phone again, her fingers numb against the glass. The need to speak to Sarah's mother was overwhelming, but as the call rang through for the third time with no answer, her anxiety deepened. She needed to speak to someone, to confirm that everything was fine, to ground herself in reality. But there was nothing. Just silence. Samantha's mind raced through every possibility, none of them reassuring. What if the man had been there, lurking without anyone noticing? What if something had already happened that Mia hadn't shared? She tried to shake the images from her head, but they clung to her like dark shadows. The fear felt suffocating. She needed answers, and she needed them now. The seconds stretched painfully, each one a reminder that Mia was miles away, in a place that should have been safe, but now seemed impossibly distant. Samantha's fingers hovered over the phone once more. A quiet scream building in her chest as she dialed again. Samantha's pulse thudded in her ears as she clutched the phone to her trembling ear, her mind swirling in a chaotic fog. She had never thought she would be in this situation, staring at a photo, trying to convince herself that everything was fine, that her worries were unfounded. But the dread gnawing at her insides had grown unbearable, and now, with the weight of the unknown bearing down on her, she could no longer ignore the gnawing feeling in her gut. The man in the background, the one she had once thought to be a distant shadow in a harmless image, now felt as if he was standing in the room with her. He wasn't just another face in the crowd. He was a predator, and Mia was unknowingly at his mercy. "I think my daughter might be in danger," Samantha repeated, her voice tightening as the words slipped from her mouth. The reality of it, her daughter, her little girl, possibly being in harm's way, made her stomach lurch. She could feel the heat of the kitchen sink against her skin, but it offered no comfort. "She's at a sleepover, and there's a man in the background of a photo I just received. I'm not sure if he's a threat, but he's a known offender, and I can't reach anyone at her friend's house." The dispatcher, her voice calm but firm, assured Samantha that help was on the way. "Stay on the line. We're sending officers to the address now. Can you confirm the address of the sleepover?" Samantha struggled to steady her breathing, the flood of adrenaline sharpening her thoughts. She rattled off the address, but her mind wasn't entirely focused on the words. It was the man in the photo, who consumed her thoughts. He had been just a blur at first, a fleeting detail she hadn't processed in the moment. But now that she had zoomed in, his presence was undeniable, a looming threat behind the innocent faces of the girls. Her eyes couldn't look away, even though the sight made her feel sick. She leaned closer, her finger gently nudging the screen, magnifying the image further, as if the closer she got, the more she could make sense of it. That's when her breath caught in her throat. There was something more. something she hadn't noticed in her panic the first time. The man's right hand, partially hidden by the darkness of the room, was gripping something. At first, it looked like a harmless object, perhaps a phone or a bottle. But as her eyes sharpened, the shape of the object became more defined, more sinister. It was small, metallic, and unmistakably shaped like the handle of a knife, or maybe a gun. Her stomach dropped. The fear she had been trying to suppress swelled inside her chest like a tidal wave, rising and crashing over her with such force that it almost knocked the air from her lungs. Was he armed? Was he watching them? Her mind spiraled with horrifying possibilities. She had to get to Sarah's house, to Mia. She needed to be there, to take her daughter into her arms and shield her from whatever threat this man represented. But the reality was harsh. She couldn't. She was too far away, helpless in her own home, waiting for others to act. The seconds felt like hours as the dispatcher continued speaking, her voice steady, trying to offer comfort where there was none. Samantha's thoughts, once calm and practical, were now a fractured jumble. She had spent years as a mother, working tirelessly to keep Mia safe, to protect her from the dangers of the world. And now, in a single moment, it felt as though all that careful protection had been pulled from beneath her feet. What if something happened before the police arrived? What if it was already too late? Samantha tried to push the thought away, but it refused to leave. It dug its claws into her, tearing away at her composure. The image of the man, his cold, threatening eyes hidden behind the shadow of the room, was etched into her mind. Her baby, was out there, vulnerable, and there was nothing she could do but wait, pray, and hope that help would arrive in time. The clock was ticking, and the moment of helplessness that flooded her chest threatened to suffocate her. She barely registered the dispatcher's voice as it broke through the fog of panic. "Ma'am, please stay calm. The officers are on their way. We're doing everything we can. Just stay with me." But how could she stay calm? How could she breathe when every instinct screamed for action? How could she wait for help when she had already seen the worst in that one simple image? The moment the officer's voice crackled through the video call, Samantha felt her stomach drop to her feet. She had been pacing, desperately holding onto the phone, her eyes never leaving the screen, trying to capture every detail in the officer's face. He looked calm, composed, but his words hit her with a force that sent a wave of disbelief crashing over her. "We found the man," the officer said, his tone far too grave, too real. "You were right to call. He was hiding in the back room. It appears he was there without anyone's knowledge, and there was a knife in his possession." The words seemed to hang in the air, thick and suffocating. Knife. Hiding. The realization of just how close they had come to disaster ripped through Samantha, leaving her breathless. She hadn't been overreacting, hadn't been paranoid, though part of her had feared just that. There had been no time for doubt, no time for second-guessing. Her instincts had driven her forward, and they had been right. Her breath hitched, and she could barely speak. The room seemed to close in around her. Mia and Sarah were safe. The thought ran through her mind again and again, like a mantra, a steadying force against the storm of emotions threatening to tear her apart. They were safe. The girls had been saved, and yet, the weight of the what-ifs pressed against her chest. What if she had waited too long? What if she hadn't seen the photo? What if... The officer's face softened slightly as he continued, his voice low, measured. "The man had been waiting for the girls to be alone. He was planning to act once they were out of sight, but you stopped him before it could go any further. You did the right thing. Your call was crucial." Samantha's legs gave way beneath her. She sank into the nearest chair, her breath coming in ragged bursts. She had stopped it. She had prevented something horrible, something beyond what she could even fathom. Her hands were shaking as she wiped away the tear that had escaped. It wasn't just relief, but something more primal, a fierce, protective love that surged from deep within her. Tears came, but not the kind she expected. They weren't tears of sorrow, not yet, not until much later. These were tears of something else, of gratitude. Gratitude for the officer's timely response, for the safety of her daughter, for the universe aligning in such a way that her worst fears were never realized. The sharpness of her instincts had made the difference. That single image, that single moment of clarity, had changed everything. As the officer's voice faded into the background, Samantha finally closed her eyes, allowing herself to breathe, to release the tension that had gripped her so fiercely. The girls, now safe, were with the officers, unharmed but shaken, as any child would be. It would take time for the weight of the night's events to settle into them, but for now, they were together. Samantha had done it. She had protected her daughter. When the call ended, she stood up, her legs still unsteady, and paced toward the door, her hand instinctively reaching for her coat. The weight of everything, the terror, the relief, the rawness of the experience, washed over her. But then, as if driven by some force stronger than herself, she turned and dialed Mia's phone. It rang twice before her daughter picked up. "Mia," Samantha said, her voice barely a whisper, as though she were afraid to break the fragile moment. "I'm here, Mom," Mia's voice came back, small but steady. Samantha's heart swelled in that instant. "I love you," she said, and the words felt heavier than they ever had before. "You're safe." "Love you too, Mom," Mia replied. When Mia finally arrived home, her small figure standing in the doorway, Samantha felt a surge of emotion she hadn't prepared for. She was trembling, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from sheer relief. Mia rushed into her arms, and they clung to each other. The embrace fierce, desperate. Samantha held her daughter tightly, as if she could somehow shield her from every threat in the world, from everything bad that could ever happen. It was instinct, maternal and unwavering. From that moment on, Samantha knew she would never let her guard down, not completely. Every sleepover, every outing, every moment away from her, those would all be watched over with a new layer of vigilance. But in that embrace, with Mia safe in her arms, Samantha felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that even in the darkest moments, even when the world seemed uncertain and full of danger, there was always something worth fighting for. Her daughter's life, her safety, her future. Those were her everything. And nothing, not ever again, would put them at risk without her fighting with everything she had to protect them.